You ever get that feeling? That little nagging thought that reality isn't quite right? You know, like a shared memory that history books say never even happened? What we all call the Mandela effect? Well, the whole debate about living in a simulation isn't just for sci-fi movies anymore. What if the proof wasn't hidden in complex physics, but right there in our past? What if history itself is the source code? Okay, let's jack in and take a look.
Right. I want you to forget everything you learned in history class. We're not looking at history as a bunch of dusty old events. We're treating it like a piece of software, a program that we can actually debug. We're going to scan the entire timeline for errors, for anomalies, for the kinds of glitches that scream the whole operating system is an artificial construct. So here's the core idea we're digging into. Our recorded history isn't some organic, messy story. No, it's a calculated backstory. A massive lore file written just to give our simulated reality a convincing sense of depth. And you know, like any piece of code, especially old code, it is absolutely full of bugs, redundant loops, and maybe even a few comments left behind by the programmers.
Our investigation kicks off by isolating the first major vulnerability we could find. We're on the hunt for a statistical anomaly, something so glaringly obvious it just completely breaks the laws of random chance. And we found our entry point deep in the Dark Ages.
Okay, so this is our data set, the official king lists of the Holy Roman Empire. We're zeroing in on this 403-year period between 911 and 1313 AD. Now, to a regular historian, this is just an era of succession and conflict. But to us, it's a self-contained data packet. And when we run the diagnostics on it, well, the numbers just don't add up.
The first variable we pull from this data string is 31. Over 4 centuries, exactly 31 kings ruled. Now, on its own, it's just a number, right? But in a forensic analysis like this, every single detail matters. So commit that number to memory. It's the first part of the key. And the second variable is 13. Now think about it. You would expect 31 rulers over 400 years to have a huge, chaotic variety of names, reflecting all these different dynasties and regions. But instead, the data shows they all pulled from this tiny, limited pool of just 13 distinct names. This, right here, is where the code starts to look really, really suspicious. And here it is. This is where the code just flat out reveals itself. You take the number of kings, 31, and you multiply it by the number of available names, 13. What do you get? 403. The exact length, in years, of the period we're analyzing. Now, in a real, chaotic history, a correlation this perfect is a statistical absurdity. It's impossible. This isn't history. This is the signature of an algorithm.
You know, in software development, they actually have a name for this. It's called procedural generation. It's a trick used in video game design to create these massive, sprawling worlds really efficiently. You just take a small set of assets, like say 13 character names, and you use an algorithm to generate huge amounts of content, like 400 years of royal lineage. It's a very clever way to write a world, but it leaves behind a clean mathematical fingerprint.
So if that procedural generation is the sign of an efficient programmer, well, our next piece of evidence points to a lazy one. We're now hunting for a crude shortcut, a simple copy-paste command that was executed right across the timeline. And this just lays the error bare. I mean, look at this data. In the year 1314, we have Ludwig IV, a Bavarian king who ruled for 33 years. Okay, now let's scroll back in the timeline exactly 471 years to 843 AD. And who do we find? Ludwig the German, also a Bavarian king, also had a 33-year reign. We're talking 2 different men, centuries apart, from the exact same place, ruling for the exact same duration. The odds of that are they're beyond astronomical. This isn't a coincidence, it's duplicated code.
It's just like history analyst Mario Arndt puts it. This is clear evidence of digital duplication. The system simply reused assets. It really seems like when the program needed to populate the sparse timeline of the 9th century, it didn't bother to generate a new character. It just copied a file from the 14th century and pasted into the past.
And this kind of asset reuse creates what analysts call phantom reflections. It's kind of like seeing the same extra in the background of 2 different scenes in a movie. This model suggests that even these monumental figures like Charlemagne or Karl de Grosse could just be a phantom copy, an earlier, ghostlier version of a later ruler, like Karl von Anjou. It's the same character model, just rendered twice. Okay, so we found an algorithm. We found a copy-paste error. Now we hunt for the most compelling evidence of all, a watermark.
a programmer's signature hidden deep in the code itself, repeating across the entire system.
So let's go back to those first two numbers we found, 13 and 31. Turns out they weren't just data points from one isolated glitch. The theory we're looking at posits that these are constants, hard-coded into the very fabric of the simulation. They are the watermark.
And this is where the rabbit hole just gets deeper and deeper. The claim is that these numbers, they aren't just confined to medieval king lists. No, they allegedly appear as structuring principles in foundational texts, including the Gospel of John, and within biblical gematria, which is this ancient practice of assigning numerical values to letters to find encoded meanings. You can think of it as a kind of checksum for reality.
So, the crucial point here is this. These aren't historical flukes, they are architectural constants. These numbers are the pillars that hold the entire artificial chronology together, a signature that appears again and again if you have the key to decrypt it.
All right, let's put all these pieces together and see what we've got. If the glitches are real, if the code is actually visible, what does that mean for us, for the users running on this platform? What are the implications of living inside a calculated history?
Well, here's the really profound takeaway. If the timeline is generated by an algorithm, then the great figures of history, they were never exercising free will. They were essentially non-player characters, NPCs, just executing a script. Their lives, their reigns, their wars, all just subroutines in a much, much larger program.
Now, this analysis doesn't give us all the answers, of course not. Instead, it leaves us with the only questions that really matter now. If our world is a program and our history is its code, the question isn't if our reality is authentic anymore. The real question becomes, who is the programmer? And maybe more importantly, when are they planning the next system-wide reboot?